Unexpected plans for WrestleMania 38 and the Royal Rumble. We've got Brock Lesnar's WrestleMania decision, plus huge plans for Elimination Chamber going forward, and much, much more. All this in today's WWE news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. There is so much to get into when it comes to WWE today, and that's not just because we're coming off the heels of the Royal Rumble. That's not just because it was Monday Night Raw last night, but it's because WWE's got more leaks than the Titanic at this point when it comes to original plans for WrestleMania, scrap plans for WrestleMania, scrap plans for the Royal Rumble. There is so much. There is just so much to get into when it comes to WrestleMania. Shane McMahon, Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Ronda Rousey, Lita, Becky Lynch. There is so much. Let's get straight into it because we've got so much to talk about today. Let's start off talking about this story that's come out, and it's really in the last couple of hours or so it's broken, and it regards Shane McMahon and Seth Rollins. Now, the last 24 hours has been filled with original plans for WrestleMania, original plans for the Royal Rumble. We'll get into that in a second, but arguably the most surprising one, and I'm so glad they haven't gone in this direction yet, it must be said, yet, because who knows what actually could happen. But Seth Rollins was originally set to feud with a very unexpected name on the road to WrestleMania 38, per a report that came out after Monday Night Raw. Now, Shane McMahon made his return to WWE during the 2022 Royal Rumble match this past weekend. Now, it was recently reported that Shane McMahon was actually originally going to be one of the entrants in the upcoming WWE Championship Elimination Chamber match at the pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia. But that, obviously, if you watched Raw last night, as we'll get into later on in the video, hasn't happened. But on the latest edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer, which I know, Dave Meltzer, when it comes to WWE, I've spoke about it, a lot of people have spoke about it, it's 50-50 at best recently, but Dave Meltzer has reported the same pitch, which other people are reporting, must be said. He also said that Shane McMahon would have kicked off a feud with Seth Rollins inside the Elimination Chamber, which will have culminated in a match at WrestleMania 38, possibly for the WWE Championship. This is madness. This is absolute madness. This is what Dave Meltzer had to say, quote, Shane McMahon was going to be in the chamber and set up a feud with Seth Rollins for WrestleMania. I don't know if that was going to be for the WWE Championship or the WWE Championship match, but it's obviously, whether it is or isn't, that was changed. So I don't know how that relates to Shane McMahon at WrestleMania, but this was supposed to be the step to that. Now, some people are speculating it might have something to do with these possible reports when it comes to Shane McMahon maybe having heat at the Royal Rumble. There was a story, and it goes around from Ringside News, and again, you know my thoughts on Ringside News, and I think a lot of people have the same thoughts when it comes to Ringside News. Now, I will give them some, a little bit of credit in that I think over the last year or so, when it comes to reporting, they've been accurate on some stuff, but again, I call it spaghetti reporting, in the sense that you throw it at the wall, sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. Nevertheless, they came out with a report that Shane McMahon possibly had heat after the Royal Rumble. He was reportedly one of the lead producers of the match. He often does the Rumble match in terms of being a producer. I think he was a producer last year and the year prior. He certainly was in 2020. And there was reports that there was heat because he insisted he would be in the final 4 people for the Rumble, and he kind of tried to center it around himself, and it wasn't about him, etc., etc. So obviously, Shane McMahon isn't in the Elimination Chamber match. He was at one point scheduled to be in the Elimination Chamber match at the upcoming pay-per-view for the WWE Championship. And as Dave Meltzer says, that was to reportedly kick off his feud with Seth Rollins. Now, he's not in the chamber. He was replaced by Austin Theory last match. He made the change. Vince McMahon reportedly made the change before Raw early yesterday. So I don't know where this one's going. And when it comes to Shane McMahon's character going forward, when it comes to WrestleMania 38, PW Insider is reporting that McMahon, of course, will be appearing regularly on the Raw brand going forward, even though he wasn't last night, but he will be booked as a heel for this run going forward. Now, as of right now, there's still no word on who McMahon's going to wrestle at WrestleMania 38. I'm assuming he's going to be on the Elimination Chamber card, considering the huge payday. There's rumors possibly Bobby Lashley, but that one's kind of been debunked as well. He could still possibly face Seth Rollins. That's put out there too, but I mean, there's lots of different ways to look at this one, isn't there? Obviously, you can look at it as the sense of what on earth are they thinking? That was an original plan. That's terrifying. I think you can also look at it from the perspective of, well, it was a plan, but thank the Lord, they managed to see sense and see that Seth Rollins versus Shane McMahon for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania in 2022 is insane. Because one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest talking points coming out of the Rumble on Saturday was that the men's Rumble felt so flat because they just don't have any. It feels like any big stars at the moment. Now, I had some people come back to me and say that's not necessarily true. You had AJ Styles in there, right? You had Drew McIntyre in there. You had Brock Lesnar going there. And it's like, okay, but put it this way. Seth Rollins should not be, like Shane McMahon. WWE have had this philosophy for over a decade now, the last 15 years. When it comes to WrestleMania season, the part-timers come out. They had it for years, Undertaker, Triple H, etc. They all came back WrestleMania and they would have their WrestleMania spot. And don't get me wrong, they earned it and it's WrestleMania, it's marquee, I get it. But fundamentally, we're at a point now where it hurts the WWE roster so much that they just don't have what it feels like any big stars. And when you get to WrestleMania, it does sometimes feel like just another event. And Seth Rollins, who is one of the biggest stars they've got right now, should he be in the WWE Championship picture at WrestleMania? Sure he should. Absolutely he should. But not with Shane McMahon. That's the point, not with Shane McMahon. So I'm glad that they've seen sense. I don't really want to dwell on it too much because I don't think it's really worth dwelling on that much because it would appear they've decided to go in a different direction. What that direction is, I don't know. And it would appear that WWE doesn't know. Now, you've got some outlets are saying that WWE absolutely know their plans for the WWE Championship. People just don't know it yet. I tend to lean on the other side that it really feels like they don't know. Now, obviously, they've probably come to that decision last night with how they've booked the Elimination Chamber. I know Brock's in it, and we'll talk about Brock later on, but I know that Brock's in it. Brock isn't winning the WWE Championship as far as I'm aware at the moment, as far as I see it. I still think they're going to split it up. I wouldn't be shocked, in fairness, if they pivot between now and the Chamber. I mean, Big E just got moved to SmackDown randomly. The brand split means nothing. And maybe WrestleMania is the best time just to, just completely dissolve all of it and have either Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar, probably Roman Reigns, win both championships and say he's the undisputed champion and he appears on both shows and the brand split's over. I'm a fan of the brand split. I think it can be done effectively. I think when they first did it in the mid-2000s, for a couple of years there, they did manage to do it effectively because you just never really saw hardly any crossover. And eventually they moved, with Survivor Series and all that kind of stuff. But initially, in the early 2000s, they didn't have that much crossover. But I think at this point, it's been proved that they can't do it, they don't know how to do it, or they can't be bothered to do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did pivot to a title versus title match at WrestleMania, but on the flip side, I think that maybe they might pivot to, maybe it's Seth Rollins versus Lashley. Maybe that's the direction that they're going in. Maybe they go to a multi-man match at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship. I don't know. All that I do know is Shane McMahon should be nowhere near the WWE Championship match. He'll have his match at WrestleMania, and that's fine because I guess he's a name somewhat. But it's Seth Rollins versus Shane McMahon. Even that, I just don't see it. I really, really don't. But we'll wait and see. Now, when it comes to original plans, it was revealed yesterday that at one point, WWE reportedly had plans for Riddle to win the Men's Royal Rumble this past Saturday in St. Louis. Now, of course, WWE ended up changing the plans for the Rumble several times over the week leading up to the event, but PW Insider reports that Riddle was the front runner to win the whole match until the final decision was made to have Brock Lesnar get the victory after being a surprise entrant. Now, this one's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one because reportedly the plans are, now this is an interesting point and then I'll give my opinion on it. According to WrestleVotes, they have kind of revealed the current plan for RK Bro. This is what WrestleVotes said, quote, WWE had plans since the pairing began last spring for Riddle versus Randy Orton at SummerSlam, which of course didn't happen. Plan was to hold off until Mania. I'm now told only a handful of creative members want to split them with the idea that if a match happens, it should be for the WWE Championship. Now, in a response to, I think it was Louis Dangoor, he said about possibly being RK Bro for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. Essentially, WrestleVote said, if someone gets their way, pal. So we could be looking at a situation still where the WWE Championship match, like I just said, at WrestleMania, is actually Randy Orton versus Riddle for the WWE Championship. Now, I do like this scenario. I do. I think the idea of Riddle winning the Rumble is better because, again, I look at that Rumble match, it was so flat, and you could argue, what did it truly achieve? Really, what did it actually achieve? Not a lot. I mean, obviously it got to the point of Brock challenging Roman for the Universal Championship, but they could have done that in another way. They could have had the Elimination Chamber match at Elimination Chamber, and that's where Brock wins, and that's where he goes on to WrestleMania to challenge Roman Reigns. Brock Lesnar's Brock Lesnar. He's a big star. Riddle winning the Rumble is an attempt by WWE to establish a new star. If he faced Randy Orton at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship, one would be expecting that he would win, which again is WWE trying to create a new star. Now, it's up to another debate, I suppose, if Riddle is WWE Championship material, if he's ready to be WWE Champion. We know certainly that Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard love Riddle. They love the character. I've warmed to the character, certainly, or their version of the character. I was a big fan of Matt Riddle in NXT because I felt like they had a better balance between being a goof and being a serious former MMA fighter, legitimate competitor. When he came to the main roster initially, he became such a goof that he was almost, to me, an anti-babyface. He was just beyond unlikable because he was so annoying. He was so aggravating. And I think the pairing with Randy has actually been able to balance that out a little bit. So I've warmed to the character certainly more. He's over. There's no doubt he's over. He got one of the biggest pops at the Rumble when he came in. He gets one of the biggest pops on Raw every single week when he comes out. He sells a ton of merchandise too. In his interviews, he sometimes is particularly frustrating. I mean, shoot interviews, like when he's interviewing with media. Nevertheless, the question could be, is this a guy that could be WWE Champion? I don't know. He's over. I would credit them if he had won the match for going, you know what? Fair play. Fair play for trying to create a new star. Fair play for going with something that's different. We keep saying you're not creating new stars. It's an attempt at creating a new star. It's a long storyline between RK Bro that's been in the process since after WrestleMania last year. And it deserves a WrestleMania-sized payoff. That's a story I can get behind. That's a story that makes sense to me. Brock winning, for me, was the obvious choice. And because WWE, I think, is as transparent as a window when it comes to their creative ideas. So I would have enjoyed Riddle because I thought, well, that's unexpected. And they can go to Brock versus Roman in a different way. You know, it's their choice. They can go in any way they want. So it's a bit frustrating that. Will we still get to that destination? Possibly. Absolutely possibly. We could still get to that destination when it comes to the Elimination Chamber, right? We could absolutely still get to the point where we get to having Riddle and Randy Orton for that championship at WrestleMania. And as I mentioned, it still absolutely could be. It still could be the way that they go, right? We've got Riddle in the chamber, so who's to say Riddle doesn't win the title then? I don't know if Riddle's going to win the WWE Championship at Elimination Chamber. That would be quite surprising, wouldn't it? But we'll see. They could do an angle where Riddle gets injured and Randy comes in. I don't know what they could do. Either way, there's still plenty of time to go, but I think that's interesting, and I think I would have probably preferred, frankly, Riddle winning it. Again, I think it's up for debate whether or not he's ready for a WrestleMania main event spot or a WWE Championship match at WrestleMania, but it's certainly curious, absolutely. Now, last night on Monday Night Raw, Brock Lesnar revealed his opponent for WrestleMania, and not that surprising at all. Brock Lesnar announced that he would be facing Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship at WrestleMania. Now, after cutting a promo on Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns, Lesnar revealed the Tribal Chief would indeed be his opponent on the grandest stage of them all. He also stated he wanted the match to be a title versus title match, and challenged Bobby Lashley to put the title on the line. Of course, that got changed into the Elimination Chamber match that we know has already been announced. So it wasn't obviously surprising. We knew that that was the direction that Brock was going to go in, or WWE was going to go in. So that hardly was a surprise that Brock Lesnar selected Roman Reigns. It's the match they've always wanted. It's the match they've wanted to do. I do think it's curious that he's mentioned title versus title again. It's the second time they've mentioned it. I know so many people and so many reports have said that's not WWE's plan. I wouldn't be shocked if they pivoted at this point because the brand split means nothing. It really means absolutely zero at this point. So I wouldn't be shocked if they decide, actually, you know what? Let's just screw it. Let's kill the brand split. It doesn't make any sense. Or if we do, let's have a soft... Or even if the point, like, you can still do the brand split. This is what they did initially in 2002. They had the brand split, but they just had an undisputed champion that appeared on both shows. They just worked double duty. So why couldn't they do that? I'm sure USA Network would be more than happy to have Roman Reigns on their show as well as SmackDown. Maybe that's the direction they go in. They've got a couple of free agents on the roster, whether it's Brock Lesnar or John Cena. Why don't just say, look, if you're the undisputed champion, you can go to both shows. And then you have someone feuding for the title on one show, and that's the direction that you go in. I think they might decide to go in that direction. But we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see when it comes to that one. Now, as I spoke about, the Elimination Chamber is coming up. It's the next pay-per-view, and the WWE Championship Chamber has been confirmed. Now, WWE announced earlier in the day that Bobby Lashley would defend his title against 5 challengers at Elimination Chamber on Saturday, February 19th. Inside the chamber, it was announced during the beginning of Raw that Brock Lesnar would be joining Lashley inside the chamber that we just spoke about, his first ever appearance inside the structure. In an update, it was then announced, finalized throughout the show via qualifying matches that it would be Lesnar versus Lashley versus Seth Rollins versus Austin Theory versus Riddle versus AJ Styles. So, and to get in with the qualifying matches, Rollins announced his spot given to him without having to qualify due to his performance against Roman Reigns at the Rumble. Theory defeated Kevin Owens, Riddle defeated Otis to qualify, and AJ Styles defeated Rey Mysterio to qualify as well. So it's an interesting one. I'm looking forward to it. It's a pretty stacked chamber match. As far as who thinks going to win, I mean, who knows? Because we don't know the direction. We really don't know the direction when it comes to the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. So I don't know. I really don't know who could win this one. Brock could win it, set up that title versus title match he's looking for. Bobby could retain. He's just won it, so why would he drop the championship so quickly? It's happened before. Seth Rollins could win it because then he could face Shane McMahon at WrestleMania. Riddle could win it because then he could face Randy Orton at WrestleMania. I don't see Austin Theory becoming WWE champion. I don't see AJ Styles probably winning it, but there is legitimately 4 people in there that could absolutely possibly become the WWE champion. So I'm curious. I'm curious where they go with it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. As time goes on and we get closer to the event, I'm sure it'll become plainly obvious because, again, that's what WWE tends to do. Another big match announced for the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view sees Lita challenging Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. So this was very interesting. So after we had a Ronda Rousey segment on Raw last night, and we'll talk about that in a second, Becky Lynch was down in the ring and she took the mic but was quickly interrupted by WWE Hall of Famer Lita, who came out. Huge pop. Lita gave Lynch props and Lynch began hesitating once she saw where the praise was headed. Lita talked about Lynch being a fighting champion and challenged her to a match at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. Now, Lynch denied it at first, the challenge, but Lita asked if she was afraid, which didn't sit well, and Lynch accepted the challenge because that's how it works in WWE, right? You know, I challenge you to a title match. No. Are you scared? Did you say I'm scared? Of course, I accept. The logic there, I guess that's pro wrestling, right? So Lita's going to be facing Becky Lynch. Kind of surprising because I thought they were going in the direction of having Lita versus Charlotte Flair, considering the segments they did on SmackDown prior to the Rumble, and they had a bit of a moment in the Rumble. I think they've pivoted. I think they've probably said, if Charlotte Flair is going to be facing Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania, it makes sense that Becky Lynch gets, a big match, Elimination Chamber, then she'll face Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. So I think that's what they're doing. Instead of having Charlotte face both Lita and Ronda, or Lita at Elimination Chamber and then Ronda at WrestleMania, they're going, okay, Becky faces Lita, then Charlotte faces Ronda. So I think that makes sense. And as I said, I expected Lita's run at WWE to continue post-Rumble because, as she said on SmackDown, she feels like she has one last run left in her. I do think she probably goes to WrestleMania. Who's that going to be against? I don't know. I still think we could see a situation maybe where the Bella Twins win the Women's Tag Team Championships. We could see Bella Twins versus Lita and Trish at Mania. That's a big deal considering the Women's Tag Team titles mean nothing. So I'm interested in this one. Lita can obviously still go, and it's a big match, first time ever match. So I'm very excited to see it. Obviously, Becky Lynch is going to retain, but I'm certainly excited to see that match at the Elimination Chamber. I spoke about Ronda Rousey appearing on Raw last night after winning the Women's Royal Rumble match on Saturday. The show closing segment of the post-Rumble edition Raw saw Rousey make her return to celebrate her Rumble victory. Rousey talked about trying to decide if she should challenge Becky Lynch or Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania, taking more shots at Lynch, but noting she has unfinished business with both. This came to a point where Becky Lynch came out. Ronda Rousey threw her over with a judo throw, got the mic from her, held her down by her arm, and said she'll give her her answer during Friday's SmackDown on Fox. So we're going to hear Ronda Rousey's choice on SmackDown on Friday. I obviously would think she's going to be facing Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. That's the direction that they're going in. Although it didn't make a ton of sense, considering she threw so many jabs at Becky Lynch for saying, I've got, it could be Rebecca, blah, 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 blah. And then she goes, but I'll tell you on Friday. So she's going to pick Charlotte Flair. But we're going to get Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 39 anyway. It felt odd. I felt the promo felt odd. The piped-in crowd noise during it was just horrendous, frankly. I mean, it was so over the top. I don't know. This is what it was like last year. WrestleMania season last year, especially on Monday Night Raw, was just bizarre and filled with where are they going? They don't know where they're going. And fast forward 12 months, we're in the same position all over again. It's insanity. Finally, a couple other things I do want to talk about. Jeff Hardy. A story floated around about Jeff Hardy getting a WWE return offer and Hall of Fame induction offer from WWE, which he turned down. Matt Hardy, on his Mattitude Monday Twitch stream, confirmed this story and confirmed the clean drug test too. He said, quote, "Whenever my brother ended up being released, he had taken a drug test, and usually these drug tests come back in 10 to 14 days. You'll get the sheet that says you were compliant and you were negative on everything. Those 10 to 14 days had been up for him and he never got a result. And he was very curious of where his result was because he knew he had passed his drug test because he hadn't been doing drugs. He's been clean. He's been clean the whole while he's been there. I know there was an issue. They said Jeff Hardy, this erratic behavior, he jumped the guardrail or whatever. But look, it's Jeff Hardy. He's a weird dude. It's kind of what he does. That erratic behavior is why they gave him a drug test and they sent him home. Working with WWE is a stressful job, and I'm not going to say that I'm here to bury WWE because I love WWE. The WWE and Vince McMahon and everybody who's there, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have this life that I have right now, so I have great appreciation. I'm very grateful for everything I've done for them. I'm very grateful for every opportunity that they've given me. It's all good, but it's also a very stressful environment as well. Anybody who has worked there knows that. So I feel like Jeff was kind of stressed out in many different ways by several different things. And he just told me that he went over that guardrail. He just knew that he was done. He was done there. He literally done with the match, so he felt done. So it's curious. It's very curious. That basically it's taken ages to get this drug test back. And Matt Hardy continues this when it comes about the reports of John Laurinaitis reaching out to Jeff. He says, quote, 3 weeks later, he hasn't got his drug test back, and especially because that little bit of information that it was either go to rehab or be released was leaked, now it's public information online on the internet, he definitely wanted to see the results of his drug test. 3 weeks out, he asked to see it and got it. I felt like there was a little bit of, well, it's the drug test company, and the drug test company said, well, it's a WWE thing or whatever. And he kind of was fighting and scratching and clawing to get this drug test. He was kind of getting the runaround. Then he got a call, which has been reported online, from John Laurinaitis, and they had offered to induct him into the Hall of Fame. They said they wanted to do this. I know people have seen this online, and that's not made up. That's a real thing that happened. And he just kind of asked for his drug test, and at the very end of the conversation, and said, no, I want the drug test. I want the clean results to clear his name, as he should, especially given his history. So after my brother's wife dealt with WWE and the drug testing company quite a bit, they actually spoke with a lawyer and kind of had to help them out a little bit. And just a couple of days ago, he got the drug test back, and the drug test is compliant. Everything was negative. He passed on all levels. So I know that's quite wordy, and there's quite a lot to get into there, but essentially, Matt Hardy saying what's been reported is true. They did offer him a return. They offered him a Hall of Fame induction. Jeff Hardy said, no, I want my drug test back, because he didn't get one back for ages. He got it back, and it was completely negative. So, as I spoke about before, it would appear that WWE thought it was going in a certain direction, acted quite quickly, and now they're backtracking and trying to, I guess, please Jeff Hardy or get him back on in line, and it's not worked out. And I think Jeff Hardy's going to be going to AEW very, very soon. Finally, Kurt Angle, I said there was a lot to get into today. Finally, Kurt Angle has confirmed on the latest episode of the Kurt Angle Show that he will be coming back to WWE in time for the build-up to WrestleMania 38. Angle was seen at this past weekend's Royal Rumble. He was seen backstage, etc. And he has teased he will be back. He will be with WWE for the next month or so. This is what he said, quote, I did receive a call from WWE and they want me to be involved in the show for the next month or so. I'm really excited about it, so we'll see what's in store for me. It hasn't said what it's going to be. I have no idea whether it's going to be the Alpha Academy, whether it's going to be Riddle, whether it's going to be something completely different, but we'll wait and see, so keep an eye on that one. Anyway, guys, as always, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. What are your thoughts on today's WWE news stories? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.